Hey, this is Christian Buckley, Microsoft Regional Director and Office Apps and Services MVP, and I'm talking today with Erica Toelle, who's an Office Apps and Services MVP as well. And congrats again on that. So it's one of those people that should have been a long time ago, but here we are. And she's also a solution architect for Blueprint Technologies. And we're talking today about e-discovery and compliance of Microsoft 365 as part of the ESPC community. So Erica, thanks a lot for talking to me today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's jump right in with question number one. So how would you approach a data request for Office 365?
Yeah, I think most people don't know there's actually tools in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center that can help you fulfill data subject requests. Of course, you need to start with the requirements from your legal department about how to properly handle those requests. But then you can use the tools in the e-discovery feature set to help you fulfill those requests. For example, if you have more of an E3 type license, you could use Core e-discovery to search for the person's, name, address, phone number, email, whatever information they submitted as part of the request. And it searches across most data sources in Office 365. You can then export those results, either a manifest listing the results to provide the information for what information you have on them. Mm-hmm. Or if you need to export the actual files, which isn't common, you could do that as well. And then if you have the more advanced licenses like the E5 suite, it becomes really powerful because in addition to searching and exporting, you could also review the content to make sure it's information you actually do want to disclose to the person. Because of course there's going to be some that you don't have to due to intellectual property or other privacy reasons. And so it's really cool that we have these tools, and I don't think most people know about them.
And so I know that a lot of people that come from information management, knowledge management backgrounds, and historically with on-premises environments as well, there's a lot of concerns like, am I hitting the right data silos? Do I have information in different locations? Is there anything additional that you need to do to connect to those other sources? I mean, or is it fairly comprehensive in the capabilities out of the box with Microsoft 365?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more comprehensive every day. For example, of course, you can search things like SharePoint and Exchange, but you can also search, OneDrive. You can search now Microsoft Teams recordings and meeting information. And the only things you really can't search are whiteboards and Stream, and that's about it.
Well, with the Stream though, if you've got the transcription services on, and those records are then searchable, but the videos themselves.
So yeah, and unfortunately, because Stream is stored in Azure, we don't have access to the transcripts right now. But at Ignite, they did announce they're going to move the meeting recordings to SharePoint and OneDrive, in which case it's just like any other file, and it will be discoverable for data subject requests or for any other type of internal investigation.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's another big benefit of a lot of the back end, the administration of that content once Stream, all that content is over inside of SharePoint.
Yeah.
So question number two. So with Microsoft Ignite 2020 behind us, as you just mentioned, what were some of the big announcements, the things that you were excited to see happen and become public, or any surprises in the capability having to do with like compliance and discovery?
Well, I think one of the biggest announcements, especially as it pertains to DSRs, is we're finally getting some graph APIs for e-discovery. So if you want to automate the process of fulfilling a DSR request, soon we'll be able to do that end to end. And then at Ignite, they announced the first wave of APIs that will be available. So I think that's a huge deal for any company of size that's dealing with these types of internal investigations. Other exciting things are the ability to do what are called modern attachments. So I'm sure you know, because you're an old school SharePoint guy, forever we've been trying to have people share links to things instead of attaching files. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's true in Teams as well, now that when you upload a file, it's stored in SharePoint. So we call those modern attachments, right? So previously, when you searched for a chat, if there was a linked document, it wasn't included in the results that you would review. But now with the advent of modern attachments, if the file has been linked to in a Teams chat or an email or something of interest, it'll pull that attachment for review and disclosure as well. And then beyond that, there's just a lot of performance improvements to search and collection and reviewing that are quite a big deal for somebody who does this day in and day out.
Is there anything else that's been announced that I mean, obviously MVPs, we have access to a little bit of information of some things that are happening, but things that have been publicly announced, anything else that's kind of on the horizon?
In terms of advanced e-discovery, no, but there's some announcements for other reasons, like for example, in the information governance realm, I mentioned the Teams meeting recordings, but we'll also now have retention and deletion for Yammer community and private messages as well. So if you have a data subject that's interacting with Yammer as an external user, and you want to expire that content in bulk, that would be something you can now do.
Yeah, that was actually an important thing. I saw it on my tenant. It's been talked about for a while, but now when I go into Yammer and I have content that I'm adding to a community discussion there, and I see that I can store it there in Yammer, or I can have it shared within saved within SharePoint as well. So obviously, you as a company, I've not gone in and explored what you can set up as the defaults and whether you give everybody that option, but that capability is there today. So instead of having yet another silo, another location to go and think about what's happening over there, have everything in one place, which is pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So question number 3. People always ask that question about getting started. It's a lot just to go, and just from what you've covered today with all the new stuff. But where should people get started in learning about content life cycles and data management? So what do they need to know up front to get started?
Yeah, so if you're doing something like a data subject request or any type of internal investigation, you want to try to reduce the costs of manually reviewing and reduce the amount of time for processing each request. So the less information that you have to sort through to do that, the better. So by having good lifecycle management through the use of retention policies and deletion policies, you can really reduce that amount of data that you are looking through, as well as you're staying in compliance with the GDPR regulations that you have to only keep customer data as long as you need it and then delete it when you don't need it anymore. So how do you enforce that at a large scale? Retention and deletion. And there's a lot of really exciting announcements around Project Cortex / SharePoint Syntax. I'm not really sure which one to use yet, to classify data more thoroughly so we can better apply these lifecycle management tools.
That's always
And
going
then,
to be like a major aspect of it, like because over the last decade or so, I mean, the cost of storage has become so less, and I think with a lot of, and I actually think it's driven because we don't have very strong search capabilities, or we've not gone in and taken the time to refine the search capabilities, and so we capture everything, we store everything. And to your point, it's like it's going to run much more efficiently and effectively if you don't have it bulked down with content that should have been expired, should have been removed, a long time ago. So that cleanup is an essential part of that process.
yeah, and then one other tool I want to mention for GDPR specifically that most people aren't aware exists is the Compliance Manager Assessment Tool. So a lot of people ask me, like, what can I do with my Office 365 environment to make it more GDPR compliant? Well, that's a complex answer that you probably hear, or you can use this assessment tool. So if you add the GDPR assessment, it goes through and gives you an actionable list of the technology controls and business processes you can put in place to meet the specific requirements of GDPR. And then if you have some of those done already, it'll automatically recognize that and give you the points towards your score for doing that activity. So when people just want to get started, highly recommend checking that out first.
I know it's not within the, the content management side of things, but just to kind of along those lines, like they just announced at Ignite the Azure Auto Manage capability, which does kind of the same thing from a security standpoint. It allows you to go and provides templates for your Azure instances, your environments that you have built out there to make sure that you're also compliant with all those rules. And you can have different profiles built for different regions where your company's at, and but it does the same thing, and flag if somebody makes a change and it's outside of the scope of what's approved through that template, it will notify you. So you can go in there and say, what is this that you're trying to accomplish? Here's why we can't do that, and make sure that you stay in compliance. So it's great having that kind of automation in place.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense, right? Microsoft could have people employed, they can do the work to figure it out, and then everybody can benefit without having to do it themselves. I mean, I think it's a great service personally.
Exactly. These are cool tools. It's great to see. Now, obviously, historically, we had to do so much go out to third-party tools, and I know there's a great ISV community that's out there that's, they're going to go and stay ahead of the Microsoft innovations and know what's changing out in the market. But it's great to see a lot of these tools where it just makes sense to have them built in part of the platform. Especially as we can, increasingly automate a lot of these activities. So as content comes in, if it's ingested through like the project syntax or SharePoint syntax, project cortex, capabilities, but as it's ingested, as it's processed, that it's automatically handling a lot of those content types. But you need to still have the policies in place for the bulk of the rest of especially the unstructured content that we have out there, which is, let's be honest, the bulk of the content that we have in our systems. But
Yeah, but it's so
uh,
exciting to see how like AI and machine learning is starting to come into play, where we can train it to look for certain content. It can find it no matter where it lives and help with some of these dark data scenarios. I can't wait to see how that evolves personally.
yeah,
Maybe it'll be a great topic for ESPC next year.
yeah, I agreed. I think there's going to be a lot because we're going to start to. It's always a year later where you start to see the use cases of, we started using syntax, and here's what we experienced, and this is what we learned from it. It's always really cool to see that. So, well,
Yeah.
Erica, really appreciate your time today, and for those watching the event, thanks for watching this, and have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you.